Welcome. It's 1 o'clock Eastern Time, 12 o'clock Central, and this is the third reference garden presentation for January of 2022. Today's reference garden is Hidden Lake Gardens in Michigan. Hidden Lake Gardens has been on tours of both regional and national ACS meetings and is home to the Harper Collection of Conifers. Two presenters will guide us through Hidden Lake today. John Genereaux has a long tenure with Hidden Lake Gardens dating back to the year 2000. Since 2008, John's position is plant propagator. So everyone has a unique opportunity today to learn what skills a professional propagator uses that could be applied to ACS members. Paul Pfeifer is the managing director of Hidden Lake Gardens. Paul has been in that position since 2014. And prior to Hidden Lake Gardens, Paul worked at a who's who of gardens, including the Cleveland Botanical Garden and Chicago Botanical Gardens. At this time, we ask everyone to remain muted with their videos turned off during the presentation. Questions and answers will be taken up after the slide presentation. Co-host Sherry Speth will be relaying your questions to the presenters from the Zoom chat, which is located on the bottom toolbar of your screen. You may enter your questions in that chat window anytime during or after the presentation. Director Pfeifer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to share the screen right now, get that out of the way. Let's see, hold on a second. Let's do that. And hopefully you can see Harper Collection of Dwarf and Rare Conifers. Is that correct?
Yes, it is showing.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Well, I want to thank Byron as well as David and Sherry Speth for inviting John and I to provide this presentation to you all today. Primarily, we're going to be talking about the Harper Collection of Dwarf and Rare Conifers. I'll make a few comments real quickly about Hidden Lake Gardens here in the beginning. So I will speak first. My name is Paul Pfeifer, and then John will pick up about a third to halfway through the presentation. So Hidden Lake Gardens was founded back in 1926 by a local Adrian businessman named Harry Fee. It was his dream upon his retirement to own a lake and a nursery, and he acquired about 230 acres of property, which included Hidden Lake, and started a nursery business, or at least attempted to start a farm. Quickly discovered that the topography and the soil quality here at Hidden Lake Gardens at that time was not conducive to farming, so he decided to start a nursery. And the Great Depression hit just 3 years after that, and he didn't want to compete with other established local businesses, so he just kept his nursery operation going on as a hobby business, if you will. 1945, Harry Fee decided to donate the 230-acre property of the gardens that he developed to Michigan State University. Back then it was Michigan College of Agriculture, but he donated the gardens to MSU for the benefit and education of the public. And so we've been owned and operated by MSU since 1995. Today we have over 755 acres of gardens, plant collections, and natural areas, both woodland and meadow and prairie. This is a photo of our visitor center. Another local family that became philanthropic with Hidden Lake Gardens was the Herrick family. They were affiliated with Tecumseh Products here in Tecumseh, Michigan, and they funded the building of this visitor center in 1966, plus the conservatory in 1968, and then our service maintenance building in the early 70s. This is a photo, aerial photo of the conservatory. The large dome toward the bottom of the slide is the tropical dome. The smaller dome to the upper right is the arid dome. Long greenhouse here that you can see with the laser pointer there is the temperate house, our service greenhouse here. And then also connected to the conservatory is our bonsai collection. So this is the bonsai courtyard here and the bonsai studio. We have about 20 bonsai on display to the public in the courtyard from April through October. And then this little area here is some of our overflow bonsai. Although we have 20 bonsai trees on display to the public during the growing season, we have about 80 trees in our collection. And then you can see up here in the toward the left of the slide a little bit of the Harper collection, which is just west, or what I like to say is behind the conservatory. This is a shot from standing up on Juniper Hill, which is just north of the conservatory and the Harper collection. Down to the lower left there, you can see the raised bed garden. This is a program that Hidden Lake Gardens partners with the Lenawee Intermediate School District, MSU Extension, and 4-H. It's a program in which children of various disabilities come to Hidden Lake Gardens June through August on Wednesday mornings, and they garden these raised beds, and they do some other programming outdoors, sometimes in the gardens here, but also sometimes in the conservatory or hiking trails, whatever their theme and program is for the day. Then you can see the conservatory there to the right of the slide. Talked a little bit about bonsai already. We have an assortment of bonsai trees. The large forest there on the left is one of our, some of our forest type bonsais are some of our more popular ones. We had the opportunity to present some trees in both the state show in Grand Rapids as well as the national show in Rochester, New York, and really appreciated the feedback, and we even won a couple of awards that we brought home some hardware with all of that. So Jack Weichel is our curator of the bonsai collection, although he's retired officially, but I still call him the curator, and you'll see a little bit more of Jack Weichel a little bit later. Display garden, our demonstration garden is where the gazebo is. It's a combination of annual perennials and some woody plants too. We do display quite a few All-America selections. We don't participate in the evaluation and judging any longer, but we do present quite a few of the All-America seed selection annual varieties throughout that garden. And there's quite a few conifers and perennials in that garden as well. So Hidden Lake is a kettle lake. Hidden Lake Gardens was formed by a lot of glacial development when the glaciers receded thousands and thousands of years ago. So we're part of the Irish Hills region here. I'm going to move along here a little bit so we can get to the good stuff. This is Hosta Hillside, which is on the southeast shore of Hidden Lake. Hosta Garden was started through a partnership with the Michigan Hosta Society in the late 80s. And this partnership was actually inspired by the previous partnership that Hidden Lake Gardens had with Chubb Harper and members of the ACS in developing the Harper collection. And in fact, Chubb Harper provided some conifers to plant in the Hosta Hillside to help create some of the bones and backdrops for some of those hostas back in the late 80s. Those are just quick shots of the Hosta Hillside. On this particular slide here, you can see that Hidden Lake there is off to the far right side of that slide. There's quite a good reflection of the trees in the background on the water, but that's right up against the water there. And another shot through maples there, and you can see Hidden Lake in the back. All right. Another shot of Hidden Lake. Here, if you love daffodils, we have thousands and thousands of daffodils planted here, and all over woodland, main lawns, all over the place. And we have 6 miles of paved roads that go through Hidden Lake Gardens. This is a slide of Woodland Drive. You can see the long stone retaining wall on the left, and just off to the road to the right is a good decline right down to the waters of Hidden Lake. So when Hidden Lake Gardens first opened, it was kind of like a drive-through garden or arboretum, where many people came to Hidden Lake Gardens on a Sunday for their Sunday drive, and just kind of drove through to see the gardens and the woodland. And we're trying to get more and more folks to park their cars and hop out and get a closer look at nature, conifers, flowers. We're even got a project where we're trying to build a canopy walk out in the woodland. So we're really hoping that we'll increase visitation, but get people even better connected to nature than just driving through. Well, the Harper Collection started back in 1980, 1981. And it was the idea of Chubb Harper, who you see here standing next to the Harper Collection sign. Of course, Chubb was an employee of John Deere out in Moline, Illinois, and he had quite a extensive dwarf conifer collection of his own on his property. Chubb was friends with Jack Weichel, who I mentioned earlier. At that time, Jack Weichel was the naturalist educator here at Hidden Lake Gardens. And Chubb was looking to donate his personal dwarf conifer collection. And he asked Jack if he thought that MSU would be interested in the collection and having it at Hidden Lake Gardens. And Jack did a little bit of legwork for Chubb, and sure enough, the agreement was formed. And in 1981, about 350 dwarf conifers from Chubb Harper's landscape in Moline, Illinois, were loaded onto flatbed trucks and balled and burlapped and loaded onto flatbed trucks and brought to Tipton, Michigan. And as you'll see later in the slideshow, quite a few of those original evergreens conifers are still part of the collection. These three individuals here were kind of the pioneers or the catalysts behind getting Jack Weichel is on the left, Chubb Harper there's in the center, and Sam Lovell, Sam Lovell at this time was an architect with MSU, and he worked with Chubb and Jack and not only deciding where at Hidden Lake Gardens the collection should go, but also designing the layout of the beds and the plantings of the collection. Sam eventually went on to move into private practice, but he still advises on the collection even today. Part of the original agreement that Chubb had when he gave his collection, plus an endowment, so there's also an endowment that helps fund the maintenance, upkeep, and addition of conifers to the collection. But one of the stipulations that he had in the original agreement was that there would be an advisory group, or what we call Harper Collection stewards, or sometimes we even call them the guardians. But twice a year, once in the spring and again in the fall, a group of nursery people, conifer enthusiasts, friends of Chubb Harper's, and HLG staff come together, and we walk through the collection, and takes about a whole day to do so. And we evaluate what's here. We brainstorm as how to improve the collection. And one of the things that gets thrown around quite a bit is a phrase that I never got to meet Chubb Harper, but there's a phrase I guess that he was very popular in saying is, give it a short ride on the chipper truck. And so one of the things that Chubb Harper wanted with this collection was to be able to display conifers that anybody could grow. So he didn't want to display plants that were very difficult to grow and would discourage people from trying, or people would get discouraged when they tried to grow them and didn't have success. He was really hoping that we could display dwarf conifers in the collection that were fairly easy to grow and maintain. And so that's part of our evaluation, is when a plant all of a sudden isn't up to snuff anymore, or it all of a sudden has become a high maintenance type of situation. Somebody in the group always will shout out, give it a short ride on the chipper truck, and you all usually agree, and off it goes. Here's an aerial photograph of what we call the lower Harper, just to give you an idea. This is probably about 1/5 of the entire collection. It is a combination of beds with multiple dwarf conifers in them, as well as some individual plantings. And this is about 1/5 of the collection. And the siting of this collection is, this is probably the lower end. It's kind of on an incline from this point forward. So it's a very rolling topography, which makes it just a great environment to view plants. But the up and down, the rolling topography really gives a great backdrop for some of these conifers, and you can really see them from different perspectives. Well, real quickly, here in Southeast Michigan, we are located in Lenawee County. We're actually zone 5. I don't know if can you see that arrow? Can you see the cursor on the screen by chance? But we're in Lenawee County, and we're literally on the border of zone 5B and zone 6A. So that delineation line almost runs right through the Hidley Gardens property. So we consider ourselves zone 5B, but as soon ago as 2019, when we had quite the polar vortex experience here throughout the Midwest, but here we had minus 26 degrees for a couple of days, which is about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than zone 5B, zone 6A. So we take those Harney zone ratings with a grain of salt, I'll just say it that way. Okay, so this might be a good place to pause, Byron, and see if we can't figure out, we want to do something on our end here so we can use a laser pointer. So can we just pause here for a second? Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry for the technical difficulties here, but I think we got our situation squared away. So, so this slide, you should be able to see on the right side of the slide a multi-trunked tree in the Harper collection. This is Pinus densiflora umbraculifera. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, good. We're ready to roll. All right. So we are now, I'm going to talk just for a couple quick minutes here, just in general about the Harper collection, and then I'll turn it over to John. He'll talk more about specific conifers in the collection. So right in the middle of this slide, I think you can see the laser pointer is our is the entry garden, the entry to the Harper collection, which is like a little seating pavilion. And then on the left-hand slide here, this plant here is the Picea abies elwangeriana, and just above it is a very, very large Vergata spruce, Picea abies vergata. And then in the forefront here is Picea abies tampa. Just a really nice collection of conifers right at the entry. And a majority of these conifers right at the entryway were planted in 1981 or within the first few years of the collection. And there are some others scattered around too. Interesting of the Harper collection. One of the great things about this collection, I think, is that there's such a wide array of colors, textures, shapes, and sizes that year-round, it's a beautiful collection. But in the winter, with a little bit of snow cover, it really, really shows off the forms and the textures, as you can see here in this slide. In fact, John and I were just out this morning. John led a guided walk through the collection this morning, and we had a light snowfall here, and it was, for a mid-January day, it was perfect. I'll just say it that way. About 16 degrees as well. And here on the other, this is on the west side of the collection. On the far left, here we have, I'm sorry, wrong way. Here we go. Here's Tsuga canadensis frosty, which was planted in 1994. And then kind of in the foreground here, this is an Oriental spruce, Picea orientalis fat boy, which we added in 2005. Thuya occidentalis calvary from 1995. Here's gold spangle, Chamaecyparis piscifera gold spangle. In 1986, this was planted. And then just behind it here is a Picea abies Villa Maria planted in 1993. Gold spangle originated as a branch mutation from Pfeifer aurea back in the Netherlands during the early 1900s. This is a full shot of that Villa Maria that was in the backdrop of gold spangle. This was a witch's broom found in the early 70s at Villa Maria Convent in Villa Maria, Pennsylvania. Joe Stupka found this and propagated it. Quite likely it is completely unknown in the nursery trade. Probably only exists in a few other Midwest arboretums in the United States, and maybe in even a few private collections. Really, really beautiful plant here in the collection. Talked about some winter shots, but fall is also a spectacular time to see the Harper collection. We have a number of sassafras trees on the periphery or on the border of the collection, which really, again, the sassafras fall color provides a great backdrop for a lot of these conifers. Another winter shot for the upper Harper, kind of facing northwest. One of our claims to fame, as far as dwarf conifers go, is a broom on Taxodium distichum, Gee Whiz. There's a mass of bald cypress growing near our exit gate by the front entrance there, the exit drive. And Gary G of G Farms from Stockbridge, Michigan, was here in 2006 and noticed this broom and began grafting it. Here's another shot of it from a little different angle and also in the fall. And here's a shot of it. This is not a Gee Whiz here at Hidden Lake Gardens. The current Gee Whiz specimen we have in the collection is quite small, but gives you an idea of what it looks like when grafted. Another one of our great collections in the collection is this marrow broom, this Norway spruce marrow broom, Picea abies marrow broom, was discovered by Dr. David Merrill when he was out looking for a Christmas tree. He was at a Christmas tree farm in White House, Ohio. And the owner of the farm, Duke Wheeler, he always attributed the problem with this particular tree is that it was a result of deer browse, continuous deer browse over the years. Dave recognized that it was a witch's broom and had gotten a hold of Hans Thum, another nurseryman here in Southeast Michigan. He quickly recommended that he get in touch with Chubb Harper, that is, and lo and behold, everybody thought, yep, this would be a great great plant to add to the collection. And so Dr. Merrill made all the arrangements and got it here at Hidden Lake Gardens. So it's a quite large specimen and really almost kind of a freak of nature kind of thing, but certainly gets people to turn their heads and take a look. Couple of other plants in the collection here. On the left is another witch's broom of bald cypress called Seacrest. This one was discovered at Sechrist Arboretum on the campus of the Ohio Agriculture Research and Development Center in Worcester, Ohio. And it's top grafted. It's kind of a tabletop kind of display here at Hidden Lake Gardens in our Harper collection anyway. And then the tree at the right, which we were talking briefly about at the beginning of the presentation or right before it started. This is the angel, excuse me, this is Picea abies pendula, and a very upright, broadly conical form, but at one time, the way the branches were so pendulous really looked very similar to a silhouette of an angel. And this particular tree, this area of the Harper collection is more or less kind of a memorial to Chubb's wife. So a very, very cool plant way up at the top of Harper collection. Again, just a couple other quick views here. I'll point out one plant here. This is Pinus strobus ottawa, a very prostrate form of Pinus strobus. But I'm going to move along here so we can get to John and be able to do some of these things and try to stay in our 2 hour or 1 hour time frame, unless you want to go 2 hours. Another shot really of the lower Harper, again, just showing the different colors and textures, forms and shapes, really just a beautiful collection here. And then the lower Harper, kind of the southwest corner. The yellow U that you see behind the bench here, this is Taxus baccata repens, sometimes called Repandens aurea, but this one is Repens aurea. And this is what John would call, this is eye candy for the deer. They just love to munch on U's. And so we do have some things that we do to try to minimize that damage. In the center here is a Xanthocypress nuitcatensis pendula glauca, and then to the left is Picea abies elegans. Another Nootka, this is a broadly pendulous form of a Nootka false cypress. And then just to the left of it is Chamaecyparis pisciferus sun gold, which is planted in 2008. And then Tsuga canadensis, Goldman's dwarf on the left. The taller trees in the background here are kind of a combination of Norway spruce straight species of Picea abies. There's also Picea abies aurea, excuse me, and then a large Pinus strobus eastern white pine off to the right there. Another great winter view. Picea abies inversa in the foreground, with orientalis skylans, Picea orientalis skylans in the background. This is the upper Harper looking from under a sassafras tree, looking downhill towards some sassafras trees in the distance. And here's our salad munchers that you can see in the lower Harper there. We do go ahead and provide some kind of deer protection in the winter. We use electrical fence all the way around the perimeter of the collection. And we do bait it so that our hope is that we would discourage the deer. They recognize the electrical fence, it's going to hurt them, so they don't even think about coming in. But we also use some sashes of plant skid. We put plant skid in kind of a nylon sock and hang them literally right on some of these U's, and so that if the deer do get into the collection and seek out some of these U's, that plant skid would deter them from munching on them. This is not a surefire way to handle these deer, but it made a large improvement when we started to do it this way. I did minimize some of that deer pressure, so it's not quite as bad as it used to be. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be able to talk to you this afternoon and kind of give you a tour. As Paul said, we had just went through this, so this is actually my second time, but it's a whole lot warmer in here than it was out there, I can tell you that. We'll get right to it. Well, this begins the collection here. This Nordman fir is just an absolutely gorgeous fir, and you can see Pendle off in the distance there. The cones are absolutely gorgeous. You know, this is one thing that we have here. It's just a tremendous amount of conage, and in some years are good, and some years aren't as good. I've taken seed from a lot of these, and some I've produced, and some didn't produce. When we only have one or two of the plant, sometimes the seeds don't get they're not viable. So and definitely on the location, you know, a lot of the stuff is wind-driven fertilization, and and since we only have one or two, our predominant wind is from the southwest, and if we just have one at the upper harbor, then there aren't any. You know, we'd have to have an ABs fairly close to it to fertilize it. This is another signature broom that we have here. Besides the Gee Whiz, this is a ABs concolor, and we call it Hasta La Vista. It's actually a wonderful broom. It's got quite a bit of history and a whole lot of fun. Former grounds manager Jerry Donaldson, which some of you may know, him and I, year after year, had some Detroit Edison folks come out, and they had a 70-foot boom truck, and we would get in position, and then they could only take one at a time. So many times Jerry would suit up, and we'd have to get locked in a belt and everything as we get the climb. And he'd go up, and the first thing we do when we get up into the broom, because it's been a whole year, is a lot of times we would prune it. We would care for it, look at its health, and see what it looks like. When you're at the bottom, if I'm fully boomed out, I'm at 70 foot tall, and that's probably about 60 feet tall. So I'm just over the top of it at 70 feet. And but it's a wonderfully irregular broom, and so a lot of times we have to do our best to keep it as healthy. As you can see, that the broom itself, which is often something that happens, that the broom takes all the energy from this particular concolor. It's not unlike others. The tree is dying, but the plant still looks pretty reasonable, or the Hasta La Vista cultivar mutation. So as I was saying, Jerry and I would go up, and then I'd get back down, and we would share kind of the ride going up and down, and we would take scion. Each of us took a little bit of scion in big bags, and a lot of times we would send it at different places all over the United States, and some of them to the local propagators. They were always looking for pieces. I know that I've gone online and seen this now plant. I know that Jerry and I took this to Dawes Arb and gave it to Rich Larson, and he introduced it into the Royal Horticulture Society. So, hey, this plant is now something. So it's pretty exciting. I have also seen it even before then, but I've also seen it in catalogs from Holland and from Sweden, I believe. And so somehow they got it there all the way from here in Tipton, Michigan. The next slide is what it looks like on the ground. We have this is just last year I took this photo, and it's interesting. For the longest time, this plant never produced any terminal apical dominant buds, and this last year it was crazy. All three plants that are there did so, and but you can see it's got a beautiful blue color, very healthy, very strong, and we're really happy with it. When I was talking about the broom some years ago, Jerry and I was up we were pruning the broom, and I was up at the broom, and up near the top to the left of the broom, I can go here. You see my pointer right about here, up inside that hole there. I got so excited because what I looked in there, and there was something in there that looked completely different than the broom itself. And it was quite unique. And I yelled down to Jerry and I said, Jerry, I think there's a broom in the broom. And he's like, what? You know, now I'm yelling it because I'm awfully high and the winds is cold and it's windy out. And I said, I think there's a broom in the broom. So he goes, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm cutting it out. And so I cut it out, and it was just you can see here, it was just probably about this big. It maybe was no more than 3 inches wide at the time. And but it looked different. The foliage was different. The texture was different, and the needles were shorter. So I had two choices. I could cut it up into about 5 or 6 different pieces, or I could just take one shot at it. And so I leaped into the fire hoop and only did it once, and I didn't cut it apart, so I could keep it as is. And now we call this Hasta La Vista Baby. And so it's quite exciting. It's pretty brand new. This is only a few years old. I have only a couple little ones, and we haven't actually started to get it out. But I know Jerry brought it when he went to one of the ACS programs. He brought one there, and so whoever had gotten that little guy certainly has something quite special. This is Hasta La Vista as well. Years ago, and back in 2008, this is a good example of when you propagate a dominant terminal. And this plant is probably not going to look, it's going to look just like its seeded version. It's or maybe a little bit narrow, but I don't know anybody with any larger ones. So we're going to keep watching this one. This is at a friend of mine's home. This is Pseudolarix ambialis, and the old golden larch. We have only one, and it struggles a bit here. And I, at the time, I didn't know we were going to be doing this. Otherwise, I would have got a whole picture of it. But this is the only picture that I have of it. But we have a lot of humidity here, and it's pretty hot. And it doesn't really care for it that much. And in this past year, 2021, it was a boomer year for the seed cones, and they were absolutely gorgeous. And I took a picture, and I've got a couple of pictures, and I saved just about every cone as I possibly could, so that I may put it and check to see if things were viable. And indeed, it is viable. Most of the seeds coming out of this cone were viable, so I was pretty darn excited. I've got about 300 or 400 planted as we speak. Picea Perry's Gold, wonderful plant, gorgeous plant. You can see it here in its spring mode and then summer mode. I don't know what else to tell you. This just shines right. And when Paul showed you the picture of using a drone, and you can see right there the road in between. I like to call that the road area there. That's oceanfront property. We always put the hottest and the sweetest looking stuff right near that road, and so that it gives an opportunity for folks to drive by. If they don't jump out, they want to jump out to see that plant, and I believe they do. I can say for a fact that this is a fairly new cultivar, and this is what really is unique about propagation and prop people. That the fact that someone drove by a ditch in Vermont one day and seen it and said, wow, that's something sweet. And sure enough, and here we are all propagating it all over the United States and likely in the UK as well. Beautiful, beautiful plant. Abies freesiae, Julian Potts, another real beauty in the collection. This does get a little bit of winter damage when we have a lot of snow or a lot of ice first, and then we get some snow. It's upright, but the branches fairly easily snap. But I will say that this particular plant is in a very, very healthy position, a very healthy location. And as some may know, here in southern Michigan, we can get, again, hot and humid, and those little spider mites like to stipple it. But don't really see that with this plant. It's really in a good, healthy location. Portsmouth Silverloki and Cohouse Icebreaker. I put both of these together because Icebreaker is a witch's broom that most probably everybody online today knows that it was found, and it was on a Silverloki. And just again, beautiful plant. We planted this in 1994. Silber means silver in German, and Loki or lock refers to a lock of hair. Um, Again, this came about. This whole plant came about in 1979. So again, beautiful tree. I would think that icebreaker looks a little bit better, but you can't go by color. It all depends on uh, icebreaker's foliage is so much more turned up, but this is a smaller plant, so it's easy to see. You can see that the actual Horseman silver Loki is very upright, and so you're really looking at the bottom of the plant. Abies nudisha pendula. It's one of my favorites, Algerian fir. You really don't see this in rarely when you go anywhere. You don't see a lot of this, especially in our area. But this was originally planted here. This was one of the original plants in 1981, and it's fairly rare to cultivation. It was originally found in France in 1971. When we had the national here in 2000, the ACS had their national here in 2000. Um, uh, so many people came here. It was a wonderful day, and there was so much action. And what we had did here is we gave everybody a flag, and for those who came, you wouldn't have known the outcome of what we did. Everybody got a flag, and then that person was supposed to put the flag in either a plant that you really liked, enjoyed, or you thought was worthy of the collection. And I would have to say that this one here created quite the stir. It was the winner. It was the winner and the best in the collection that day. Just a nice long shot here. Off to the edge is inversa there off to the left. You see beautiful glowing spring color green. That's Skylands. I say orientalis Skylands. But this particular photo is where I'm getting to here is I'm showing that the Cedrus lamane stenocoma. And in this particular, this beautiful biblical cedar, it's from the Near East. It came originally, was found in the Taurus Mountains in southern Turkey. And it's very unique plant. It's been fun to watch over the years. And unfortunately, this is about 3 or 4 years ago, this picture, and it is currently not too healthy, and it is slowly dying. I will say that Paul talked about Jack Weichel. Jack Weichel was the one who planted it. He got this plant and he planted it. And at the time, it was 6 feet tall and about 3 feet wide. And right now, it indeed still stands as the tallest and the largest in the entire collection. Another picture of it. The other side. Looking up underneath it. This picture here was the last cone that I had found that I've ever seen in this beautiful conifer. I will say that I probably shouldn't have, but the things that you do to get a picture, I left it there. I didn't propagate it, but I just left it there. I rolled the gator up near this spot, which was a little bit on an incline, and then I put a 10-foot ladder on the back of the gator, and then got up on almost the top rung so I can get to right where it was. You can see I'm right on top of it, but I couldn't go any higher. I was a bit shaky, but nobody was around. They could have found me lying there with a broken back, but I had to get that picture. This is a wonderful plant, and many of you probably know Andy Duvall of South Lyon, Michigan. In 1999, he selected these plants, and they were seedlings from Contorta. And they're wonderful, wonderful plants, and so pleased to have them here in the collection. They were in the Upper Harper location in Wiggles, and it's in Squiggles. Wiggles is on the right, and Squiggles is a little higher. And you can see that there's a little bit different form. Wiggles is a little bit, or Squiggles, I'm sorry, is a little bit tighter, and Wiggles is a little bit more open habit. The plants behind it is a Picea orientalis, rare flora, and you can see down here the bottom, left to the rock, or just down in the forefront. That's Picea abies push. Another plant that if you got to kind of go find this plant, you got to kind of just happen upon it. Actually, it's behind. It's up in the Upper Harper, and it's off to the east a little bit, but it's slowly growing. This Carolina weeper, Labar's weeping, is just a gorgeous plant. I know that I believe Jeff Bowman was talking about a Carolina that they had there at Dawes and I certainly agree with them. The cones are outstanding. Once called the mountain, a mountain hemlock. They don't call it that anymore, but kind of wish they would have left it. I like the name mountain hemlock. Oh my goodness sakes, this is such a gorgeous plant. Many of you who are here, the big deal, Bob Fincham came to the ACS in 2000. And all of you know, I'm certain, Bob Fincham. And he introduced this. This is Picea chub. And he brought this mother plant. So we are now looking at the mother plant on the left. And he brought this plant and he gave it to us to Hidden Lake Gardens for us to care for and to propagate as so. And you can see that the foliage is very affected by light. You can see on this side is we're facing the north side, the side that you're looking at now. It's a lot greener. This is during the summertime, and but the other side is much more yellow. And I just wanted to point that out because we all know that it's sort of yellow. And you can see the picture I took here was on the south side. You can see too again this particular cultivar was started by fertilization, and he had it was a cross between Acrocona, and he took the pollen from gold drift, and what a gorgeous plant. It's outrageously gorgeous, and it's outrageously rare. There's very few of them around, and we're glad to have it grace this piece of property. And it's another one of those that some people just walk by and they have no idea what it is. Another beautiful plant is the Craftsbury Flats, is Larthiana, and love the form and beauty and the outstanding fall color. You could see off to the right there, you would be able to see the Merrill broom tree. Absolutely gorgeous plant. Just such a unique plant. It's one of my favorites. Beautiful terminal broom. Very difficult to propagate. It does not like to take on a graft. I'm finding ways to root it. Platycladus orientalis Morgan. I got to tell you, folks, it's a wonderful plant, really. And in investigating this some time ago, I was so surprised to find that it's called Morgan because it was a seedling that was found by Mal Morgan in Sydney, Australia. I'm like, wait a minute, Australia is like in the South Pacific somewhere, isn't it? I mean, it's close to tropical zone. And so I ended up now I'm studying of plants that are in Australia, and I found that there was 5 main hardiness zones there. It literally goes from zone 7 to zone 12, and it looks as if Mel in his nursery in Sydney, Australia, was in zone 7, and just quite a beautiful plant. Got the purple hues because of the pigments that happen because of the cold weather, which is pigments are called the pigments that are being used here to protect the plant are anthocyanins. And if you were to open the plant, as some may know if you have this plant, you'll see that it's beautiful sea green in the inside. It's only on the outside. It's certainly an adaptation to protect the foliage when there's an inability to photosynthesize it. Somehow the sun can get very hot in the winter, and it has to have a way to protect itself. And many plants, and most plants actually, protect themselves by a series of different pigments. It's just that many of those pigments we cannot see. Fortunately for us, Morgan shows up very nicely. Another Platycladus orientalis, Frankie boy. Another wonderful plant, snake-like, filiformis-like. Ours is getting pretty big now, looking pretty good, very healthy. It's one of my favorites, the old Picea clambrasiliana. Certainly its claim to fame, it is the original broom that was found by Lord Clanbrassil in Belfast, Ireland It was the first name cultivar ever. I know that Bob Fincham, he had quite a few of these at one point. And when he produced this plant, he always took the smallest of plants. He made it, it was even more miniature than normal. He had the true form. This particular form that you're looking at, which is this whole plant, it's insane. When I get my pointer, I'm actually going around. It's this entire plant here. You can see inversa in the back. And this is Dobbs frosted Juniperus presentalis in front of it here. But you can see that there's multiple terminal and laterals, but they're all different sizes and quite fascinating. The Lord Clanbrassil himself and the propagators from there, they talked about it being a multi links, but during that particular time, they may not have known back in the 1780s is when they found this, and it's just such a wonderful plant. But they may not have known that the propagators there, that if they were to propagate the terminal, then they would get a lot larger plant. So I can tell you for a fact that this is a plant that was propagated by a terminal. And when I read about that, it was interesting in the magazines. The reason they did so is because they were trying to make as many as possible. And so they just were using all kinds of cyan wood. It didn't really matter. I can't say this for certain, but it certainly it makes me wonder if they just did it. And they probably didn't know that if they were to take the small stuff, it would have been smaller. But they were just trying to get it out. Oops, excuse me, I'm sorry. They were just trying to get it out of there. But I think one of the most important facts is that we've been propagating. I will say the wonderful thing about Chubb Harper giving this collection to us is the fact that there's so much history wrapped up in it. We've been propagating this plant for 242 years. When you touch that plant is 242 years old. It's a clone. And it's an honor. It's really an honor to know to have the opportunity and to have this kind of wonder in a wonderful facility like this. And Chubb Harper started this. Chubb Harper started this whole process. And look at all, I'm not even partway through, I'm partway through this, and look at all the different plants, all the different mutations, all the different things people have found. And it's just a wonderful collection. Just the mere fact that we've got an opportunity to be able to showcase so many things. It's actually just so wonderful. I'm certainly, in the wintertime, I am a kid in the candy store here. I can tell you that. Almond trout, Frodenberg, both Piceo omorica or morica, both beautiful plants. What I like about these is that you can see the differences. I really was talking about the two witches brooms, very similar but you can see that Frodenberg definitely has much more terminal action going on. I see Morica pendula, gorgeous plant. We've got a couple of them in the collection. Just absolutely wonderful plant. Does very well here. I see a Morica pendula bronze, another absolutely gorgeous. I'm so pleased that we put them in this position where we put three together. It makes much more an impressive when you're in all different locations of the property. You can see the road there off to the right, where that's what I call oceanfront property. And I love them so much is because I know here in Southern Michigan, we cannot grow Sequoia giganteum and pendulums. And that would be wonderful, but this is about as close as I think I'm going to get. Off to the right here is brevifolia. We have 3 brevifolias in the collection, but this is our largest in Picea glauca pendula. Very narrow, very beautiful, gorgeous plant. Joe Cozy, the umbrella pine, Cyadopodes. This is a lot of fun. This to me is really fun to watch grow. I will say the quick story. Mr. Ron Alardo, which I'm sure many of you know, he donated this plant. We put this in the lower Harper because we thought it would survive there. And this is the more cold hardy of many of the Cydopodies. And Joe Cozy, you can see that the buds are a little bit deep. It looks like the buds to me are a little bit deeper into the inner stem, and for winter, looking at for winter foliage, and or winter buds. And I stood right next to him while they were getting ready to plant it. I'm like, Ron, it's not going to survive. Just not going to work here. No, we're going to just give it a chance. We're going to give it a chance, and we'll put it in there. And it was probably only about 4.5 feet tall then in 2010. And I says, well, that old adage. I says, if this survives, you're going to see me eating the bottom of my rubber shoe. And I got to tell you, if you look at my teeth right now, I still got a piece of rubber stuck into my teeth. I definitely have to be chewing on the rubber of my shoe because it's now 2022 and it looks beautiful and it's a gorgeous, healthy plant. Bisabius gold drift, just a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. You can see moonshot right over the top of it. Boyko's sundown is off to the left of it. You can see the more whiter, the more ghostly gray there in the back. That's silver Loki, and some of the Picea aves straight species straight back. You see a double there. Picea aves Froberg. This is summer. We've got 2 of these in the collection, both in this lower Harper location. And one's on the west side and this one's on the east side. We allowed this one to be stay prostrated. We didn't allow it. It just did it on its own. And it's just a beautiful, gorgeous, and it's very round when you see it from the top. It's very round. Having the ability to look at these plants from the drone gives you a completely unique perspective of the different plants, especially when you know them fairly well. And here is the winter version of it. Picea aves Farnsburg. I actually did these are all the bergs that we have on the property. Farnsburg is actually a very wonderful plant. And all the bergs, so I'm talking Farnsburg and Froberg, were introduced by the Halio Nursery in Switzerland in 1975. In particular, Farnsburg was in 1975. This particular one it's much more refined. Its needles are a little bit flatter on the inner stem. And they don't look like, they're all seeds from Inversa. And they don't look like Inversa. Inversa is very stiff. And it's got a lot big, heavier growth. I would say that Farnsburg has a little bit more growth than Froberg. And both do a tremendous amount of skirting. Outrageous plant. It's just so wonderful. There are 2 other plants that were introduced by Halio Nursery as well. And that was Arberg. And they did so in 1965. And there was another one called Wartburg. And I will say, I'm putting a shout out to folks that may know or may have. I am looking for Wartburg and Arberg so that we may put in the collection. So if someone would be interested in donating, or we will buy them, potentially about a 2-foot plant or a foot to a 2-foot plant is about perfect. You can care for it for a year or 2 more before we put it in the collection, and then kind of let it begin its new life in its new location. But that would absolutely be wonderful. Those are the 2 plants. I would love to have all the bergs and to be able to have the story to go along with that. Picea aves Wingle's Weeper. This is one of my favorites. This little sweet cultivar was a seedling by Matt Wingle. It was found in a Christmas tree plantation in Cedar Ridge in Augusta, New Jersey. Again, here's what I was talking about, folks. All kinds of history, all kinds of wonderful people involved in such, and this was in the early 90s. This is the beautiful, beautiful plant in our collection. Another one that I didn't put in here that is similar is Rare Floral Weeper, another Picea aves, Rare Floral Weeper. It's tight. It's tight to the ground. This one's pretty tight, but Rare Floral Weeper is even more tighter to the ground. When you walk up on it, you're surprised that it's not a juniper. Aves alba pendula. This is kind of a fun plant for me. And I go back to Jeff Bowman when he was introducing some of the plants at Dawes. This particular pendula was planted in 2011. This mutation was found in 1835. So indeed, this plant is the very first few that were ever even talked about to put in somebody's garden. So this is right up here with Clambrassiliana. I know elegans is another one. Picea elegans is another one that's way back there. We've been propagating this plant for now 187 years. We are touching some real beauty and some real history. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. But the fun thing about this particular plant is both Jerry Donaldson and I went down to Dawes Arboretum many years ago, and we're just enamored by the collection, but they have a lot of maturity there. And we'd seen this plant, and I just gravitated toward it immediately. And I asked Jeff if I could take some Cyan. And here's what happens when a graft goes good. It's wonderful to be able to take a piece from Dawes and bring it here, but that's how it's done. We're moving it all over the place, and just a gorgeous, gorgeous plant. And thank you, Dawes Arboretum and Jeff. Abies Prostiera lassa graciosa, gorgeous plant. It does burn in our heavy years, very cold years. I took the better side of it. The other side's not dead by no means. There's just a big hole on the other side. And that's where there was a lot of death many years ago. 20 years ago in 2000, this particular plant was only about 1.5 feet, 2 feet high at the most. Not a whole lot of skirting. It's now 6 feet high, and the skirting is almost out to 6 feet. Abies Concolor Winter Gold, beautiful plant, doesn't burn, beautiful location, chartreuse color. We have this up in the Upper Harper. We're facing almost dead north now. And off to the right, Saybrook's Gold. I'm not a big Junie guy, I got to tell you. There is a few I really love. Dobbs Frosted, Saybrook's Gold is certainly one of my favorites. Another one would be Robusta Green, which we have in the collection. It's an upright that is sort of twisted and turned, and these all do really well here. The green carpets and some of the others really kind of suffer. But this is a particular one that does really well, this Saybrook's Gold. And again, that adaptive for cold hardiness, this particular plant goes from yellow, and it's very yellow in the summertime. It goes from yellow to orange. And that adaptiveness is carotenoids. Those are the carotenoids in the plant are the pigments that help this plant survive the winter and not burn. Metasequoia glyptostrobides, Ogon, and Gold Rush, its nursery name. Ogon is its original name. Again, this is another gorgeous plant in the collection, and it's a fast grower. It's done really well for us. It's kind of growing out a little bit. We're going to have to do a little selective pruning to make it stay and keep it located where it's at. But it's an absolutely gorgeous plant. My next slide is I'm going to do something for you a little bit different than others have done. I'm really interested in the anatomical, morphological, and the physiological aspects of conifers. And often, and I even did it this morning, speaking to the group that I had. We had 19 people this morning, and I asked them all, have you ever taken a conifer bud apart? Have you ever taken the bud apart? Have you ever taken the sheath off conifer bud to see what it looks like? So specifically speaking about dormancy, what I wanted to do was, how does a plant go dormant? How does a plant see? What does it do? How does it get hardiness? And this has to do, so what I did is I took Picea abies Froberg. And decided to use the lateral bud, simply because lateral buds are what most brooms come from. Some come from terminals, but sometimes they come from laterals. Many times they come from laterals. And then I thought I would share with you what it looks like inside as we get down to the primordial shoots. As we get down to the primordial shoot of the plant. And it was a lot of fun taking them apart. And I used the microscope to be able to get a much closer look. So many of the pictures are anywhere between 60 and 200 times as we get down. So lateral buds on Norways are fairly small, not too big. We're probably looking at no more than a quarter inch off the side of the interstem. And you can see that the needle is there, and you can see the stomata on the needle. The stomata is the small holes on the bottom of the needle that allow the carbon dioxide and the oxygen, that molecules, to get into the plant. And as I slowly, some observations that I did, as I slowly worked the leaves off of it, leaf by leaf by leaf, I couldn't help but think it was like peeling back corn. The sheath is very thick, very thick. The sheath was very papery. There was very little wax on it, like you see, let's say, on a jack pine that's just totally waxed out. Quite beautiful. But it took a little bit of time to get down to the center. And right now, before I go, one more thing I want to say too, we are in what's called endodormancy, where the plant is now dormant. It's completely dormant. And for it to go into what's called ectodormancy, it has to fill up. Think about filling up a glass of water. As I fill the glass of water, at some point, it's going to drip over the edge. And when it drip overs the edge, that is the trigger. And for us to go into the next part, so right now, Picea abies Froberg is completely dormant. It cannot get out of that dormancy. I cannot make this plant a bloom, so to speak. I can't make it push until it has a chilling effect. It's the chilling effect that creates the next phase of dormancy, which is called ectodormancy. Think of a temperature itself filling up the glass day after day after day of anywhere between 14 degrees and 28 degrees for about 300 hours. After that 300 hours, this plant can be propagated. This plant can begin to go into ectodormancy. Ectodormancy brings another level of changes that are happening. Right now, there are no changes happening in this plant. It's sitting fully dormant. It's a close-up view of the stomata. You're looking at the arrangements of the stomata are always in a line on all the conifers. Specifically here, you're seeing the white inside there is a waxy substance inside the holes. Those holes are connected to the chloroplast, and the chloroplasts are where the photosynthesis is happening. So it's almost a direct hit of carbon. Think of it like this. Carbon dioxide and oxygen is a molecule. You and I breathe it in, and that the carbon dioxide comes out because we don't need it. We need the oxygen. A plant, though, on the other hand, breathes in, if you will, the carbon dioxide, and that same carbon dioxide and oxygen molecule, and it exhales the oxygen that we need to breathe. It's the carbon dioxide that it needs for photosynthesis. That's why it goes straight into the chloroplast. That's another just picture of it with a pointy tip. I found it quite interesting, just using for my own to see the sessile and what we call the woody peg on there. I think it's very neat looking close up. Who knew? You get it under a microscope, such beauty. As I begin to piece off, you're taking a look at the primordial bud. That's only about 1 millimeter. It's very tiny and much closer to the inner stem than I thought would be. I thought it would be much closer to the top as I took it down and began to dissect it. As you see a more close-up picture here, you can see that the arrangement of the needles is extremely tight. And they're rounded. They're not pointed like you might expect. That's why I showed you the pointed picture of where the one with the stomates. They're not rounded. Once we go into ectodormancy, anywhere between, it could be every species a little bit different. But for the Norway spruce, this would be probably 5 to 10 days in. These will start to sprawl out and they will get pointy almost immediately. Close-up view of the apex, right in the center. You can see here, if I can bring over the pointer. No, can't bring over the. It's okay. You see right in the center. There's no bud there. It's only meromesthetic material. The bud will not be made or knitted yet until much later in the spring and in the late summer. Right now, all the energy will be to putting out new photosynthetic material. I cut the bud in half so I could look inside it. And to my surprise, as you can easily see in this photo, you don't see any needles. It's all it is meromesthetic material. All the DNA and all the information that's just sitting there waiting for it to start to, I always like to say, start to knit. When I watch my wife knit with 2 needles and something just shows up, which is quite fascinating. So I just kind of say, I like to say that it knits it, but quite a beautiful picture. And you can see that it's really not even attached to that primordial meristem. I also took Pinus coreansis and did the same business with it. Scales are plentiful. A lot of wax on here. Quite beautiful. Took a long time to strip this one down. As we get into the inside, I only was able to strip down okay, as you can see the pointer right here. When I brought this down, this coating that you see right here, that is the needle in this thermal protective sheath right here. Quite beautiful. And to my surprise, it was almost tubular in effect, and quite a beauty to behold. I was just so surprised by what I had seen. Now I cut about 1/3, I probably almost in half at this point. I'm cutting it almost in half. Pointer over here. You can see the primordial merostem. And right in this area here is all the DNA that is necessary for it to grow. This really isn't the merostem. It's sort of if you were to think about it as a full size, this is sort of the inner stem. We're looking at a primordial inner stem. And we're looking at the inside now of the needle. Each one of these is a needle. This is not a bud here. This is just a needle on the other side that I didn't actually quite cut through. This next, right here, if you can see these little gaps, when ecodormancy is coming in place, what's happening is all just at where the bud was, all the lipids, all the starches, all the carbon is all ready to go. But it's really interesting that conifers do not put that in here yet, because if this bud dies, they want to make sure that that bud or that energy that's being stored is not here yet, because if this bud dies, they will have lost all that energy that was saved from last season. So it waits until ecodormancy, and it senses that this plant is a viable bud still. And there's these little locations, as you see right here, these little locations, they fill up along this meristem of lipids, starches, carbohydrates, and sugars. And then the next shot is where it's actually attached to the meristem. You can see that this is now the inside of the needle. As I work my way down with the pointer, you can see it's actually attached to the meristem, actually where it would be attached and eventually going to be that little sessile that we all pluck off when we're propagating. But here is a good, as I cut a little bit more off, you can see these large openings right here. So they're already ready to start accepting all the different nutrients that's ready to nourish this little needle and get it going. But the important part is you can see in the picture here that it's not a full needle inside there. Much like the spruce, the needle itself is not already fully prepared. it will knit itself into existence. This here is a wonderful photo. As I cut one more time, I was able to see, and as you can see here, this was the back side or the bottom side on the other side. So this was translucent enough that you can see the stomates from the inside of the needle. Quite unique, kind of fun to see. And you can get a good glimpse here because I kept turning the lights off on the computer, try to get a better look at it. But you can see the thermo sheath that goes over the top of this needle. And you can see all the meromesthetic material inside here. This is where all this area here would be all the chloroplast and all the things that are inside the needle. Just an absolute wonder to behold, and a gorgeous, wonderful to see what was actually inside buds. I wanted to share that with you. It was something that I just recently did this year, and I hope you folks enjoyed it. You know, on behalf of both Paul and I, thank you so much for tuning in, and hope we didn't go over too long. It's my normal nature to go over almost all the time. Everybody who knows me knows I do. And so, but we did have some problems here. So I hope folks stayed with us. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you Hidden Light Gardens and all that we have here.
Well, thank you, John and Paul. That was a great presentation, and I just love seeing conifers from the inside out. That was a lot of work doing all those slides. We do have a lot of questions that I've seen come in. Let's see, I have to find the first one. One of them is, what is the name of the lyrics with the flower-like cones? That was earlier in the presentation.
Oh, that was a golden larch?
I believe so.
Yes, that's a golden larch. That's Pseudolarix ambialis.
Thank you. And Deb Gardy says, Paul, I am growing Hosta La Vista. It's getting to be a good size. Would you like a picture?
Yes, most certainly, please. That would be great.
We always want to see what it looks like. We really haven't seen one like really, really mature. And that's why it's kind of interesting to see what's actually happening with it. For the longest time, until 2008, we never had propagated this plant. Very little propagation has ever been done on that witch's broom. So yes, absolutely, to see what it looks like.
Yes, please.
And also in our yard, this is the first year it produced cones for us too. About 10 slides back from AB's Pneumatica Pendula. Oh yeah, okay, that's the same one with the lyrics, sorry. And Byron asked, do your Cytiopatis seed?
Haven't seen any. Nope, not as of yet. That's not to say it won't. It just may not be mature enough. Or, you know, a plant that normally will seed, we'll have to wait and see what happens. You know, when we use the word native, it's kind of thrown around a lot. Native in one aspects, in the context I'll use it today, is something that can survive all the environments that we get in a year and be mature enough to seed and flower. And if it can do that, it's sort of in the context of being native. There's actually a couple definitions of native. And so when people ask that question, I put that there. But yeah, that's not to say that it won't. It just may not be mature enough yet to do so.
Right, ours. So Kate asks, what was the plant you mentioned that you had only one cone from? And what was the first name cultivar? I think it was the plant you were.
Yeah, that's Cedrus labani. We only had one cone left. We're currently looking for more Cedrus labani stenocoma. We're looking actually for plants. I have in my search, I found it actually quite difficult to find actually some plants. So again, shout out here, if someone knows of some that we may be able to get some, I would even be willing to buy multiple plants because I might have some death along the way. So I could buy a dozen of smaller plants, but yeah, the cone there was Cedrus labani, that was Stenocoma, and that was the last cone I ever seen on it.
Mhm. Thank you. John Chapin asked, while enjoying the gardens on the last fall's ACS tour in the Detroit area, I overheard a conversation about how you are having problems with thistles at Hidden Lake. I told them at the time that there is a wonderful, highly selective herbicide called Lontrel, LONTREL, that will wipe out your thistles without the slightest damage to the conifers. It is
Very
also
good.
great for pretty much any broadleaf weeds, including dandelions, clovers, plantains, and more. It won't damage turf or ornamental plants, deciduous trees, shrubs, and most of all, garden perennials, except those in the daisy family, like coneflower, Shasta daisies, and rudbeckias.
Very good. That's wonderful.
We need it badly.
We
Thank
need
you.
it badly. Sadly, these past COVID years now, we've had very little help here, and so some things had to go the other direction for us here. And there's a lot of thistle in a lot of places as well. And there's a lot more other weeds. I never seen so much pokeweed before. Oh my goodness sakes, it's coming up everywhere. I would say it's poking out everywhere.
Right. Denise says, who was the first presenter? That was awesome. Technical difficulties happen. I really enjoyed it. That probably, Byron, can you answer that?
That was Paul that
Oh,
presented first.
okay, sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Then, yep, there's a lot of thank yous here from many people. I'm just going through them to see if there were any other questions.
You're absolutely welcome.
This one in particular, this presentation was amazing. I will definitely be watching the recording to see it again and on a larger screen instead of my iPhone. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, there'll be the conifers look better when they're bigger.
And
They
let-
sure do.
oh, go ahead.
Thank you. That was fascinating. Really enjoyed the science behind the echo dormancy. Helps to understand how to have more successful grafting.
You're welcome.
Tom says, sorry, you must have been asked this countless times. The large spreading Picea abies pendula or inverse, dating back to the 1980s, was that planted as a single plant or as a grouping?
I personally can't answer that question because it's so large. You really can't get into the plant. In the beginning, I do know that we did plant. I know that when I was talking to Sam Lovell this past October, there was some plants that were multiples that were put in so that we can get, because if you were to see it when 1981, it looked more like a golf course. I mean, these tiny little plants in this massive area, and they look so small. So they might have been trying to get it going a little bit more. So, but can't completely answer that question, but I may jump into the plant itself and see if I can find the where the stem leads to.
From John Gilliland, is there a database listing of the plants at Hidden Lake?
We do use BG Base for our plant records database, both for the Harper collection as well as in general for Hidden Lake Gardens, and it is connected to the BG Base network that also tracks the plants at the Beale Botanical Garden as well as the entire woody plant collection on the campus of MSU. So it's not available to the public yet, but it's our goal to come up with an electronic version or somehow get a plant list and also a map of the Harper so that people could see not only what plants we have in the collection, but where they're located in the collection. So whether you're sitting at home or you're actually here in the gardens with your iPhone or smartphone, you'd be able to utilize that technology. I don't know at this point when that might happen, but it's certainly on our radar screen to try to get that available.
Thanks. Deb
I
Gardia
will-
asked,
I'm sorry, but I will comment. In the past, we produced a printed list of specimens in the collection. And it was listed both in alphabetical order for the whole garden, but also in alpha order per bed or location. And we are in the process, actually we have, we're ready to go to print with that. We've got to do just a little bit of inventory, some things we're going to do here this winter, but by this spring, we'll have a paper, a printed version, and we can also get that on a PDF. So at least be a list of cultivars and of the conifers that we have in the collection. But we don't have access to the database for the public anyway.
okay, thank you. And Deb Gardia asked, how recent did you take most of the conifer pictures?
They're all over the place. A lot of them are probably within the last 2 years. A couple of those with the stem, those are by 3 years old. But for the most part, they're all this last summer, and a couple from the summer before.
Okay,
All the winter ones are from this year. We had an early snowfall, and I knew we were doing this, and I went out and took some pictures so that we could have the most up-to-date pictures as possible.
great. John Chapin says, although the Hidden Lake is kind of in the middle of nowhere, it's close enough to Ann Arbor to include lots of fun places to visit and eat, and to make it a great 2 or 3 day visit.
We love it. Yes, come.
And both, I think I can speak for John here, but we would both be more than happy to spend time with folks that wanted to come and spend time in the Harper. So if you like a little bit of a heads up, schedule a day and a time and make ourselves available, provide kind of a guided tour.
Okay, but thank you. Byron Baxter asked, could you recap the bergs you are still looking for?
Arberg, AARBERG, and Wartburg.
Oh, okay. And I believe that is all the questions.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Gentlemen, thank you both very much, and thank Hidden Lake Gardens. I can never recall seeing slides from a microscope. That was amazing.
Wonderful. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you all again very much. And I'll remind everyone that next Saturday, we'll conclude this year's reference garden presentations. The Bickelhaupt from Iowa will be featured. Same time, same link, and we look forward to seeing you then.